Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday Build. This is episode 1.13, and today we'll be discussing the topic quality assurance in new legal tech professions, why I created official Gavel certification courses. Today we'll be featuring Megan Sawtell, who is my business partner in the course creation of the Gavel certification courses and the certified Gavel expert. My name is Brittany Hernandez, and you can call me the beet emoji or B, or you can call me Peanut or Brittle, as my dad and my uncle like to call me. I'm from San Diego, California, but I live in London now. I'm a veteran of the United States Coast Guard. I lived in Puerto Rico and Alaska and served on active duty in the United States Coast Guard as a boatswain's mate second class petty officer. I'm also a lawyer. I focused on intellectual property and entertainment law in California and worked with people who were producers and directors and composers. But I knew that I was going to be going into a master's degree with the London Film School and the University of Exeter on international film business, so I could understand the business aspects of the law and specifically in the entertainment industry. So I founded my own practice, Cormayam Law, and later founded my own company, Cormayam LLC. I worked as the business development executive for a legal tech startup called Gavel out of Scotland. I'm also a Gavel expert, and I worked as a professional Gavel expert, which is going to be relevant to what we're going to be discussing a lot today for this topic. And I worked with gig law, which is going to play a major part in our conversation as well, and why it's important to have some quality assurance when it comes to new legal tech professions. I'm also the global ambassador to law schools for Gavel, which is formerly Documate. I'm also the program director and senior instructor for the Law Students in Legal Tech Access to Justice Fellowship for Gavel, where we just kicked off week 11 out of 12, and then we're going to be doing a hackathon competition later on. I'm also the creator and host of the Lightning Talks for Legal Innovators series, which is also in partnership with Gavel, which we have going on tomorrow if you'd like to join us, where Jacqueline Schaefer, who is the founder and CEO of ClearBrief AI, will be joining us to talk about ClearBrief and how you can use legal tech to better kind of serve your customers and increase customer satisfaction. I'm also the creator of the free interactive digital magazine called Code Word Hex, which is built on Gavel, and the founder, course creator, and senior instructor of Cormayam Academy, where we have Gavel certification courses, which I'll be talking about today and more, and as well as the founder of Cormayam Retreats, where once a year I go with a couple of ladies to different places around the world, and we're all founders and entrepreneurs and high achievers who just want to connect and learn from each other and grow our businesses together as we plan out our next year. So that's a little bit about me. So today I'm not going to have an overview slide because we're going to focus going on straight into kind of the content today. So as I mentioned, today's topic is really focused on this idea of quality assurance in new legal tech professions. This is a really timely topic as well, I noticed, because of some recent posts by some industry leaders, such as Mark May, for example, who is the founder of The Legal Technologist, who I recently did an interview with for his podcast, which is great. You should definitely check it out. It's called All Paths Lead to Legal Tech, and it's on Spotify and everywhere else. But I found that before he posted this, and I was already thinking about how we can have a conversation about the role of sort of certifications and courses and sort of some standardization around legal tech careers as this sort of industry is rapidly changing, and so many different types of new jobs are really getting pushed to the forefront. But how do you demonstrate your proficiency in this particular field if there is no certification or course or formal education to demonstrate that to the market that you know what you're doing? So I'm speaking specifically of his post of just yesterday, so March 28th, where he says, defining the legal ops career path project. So he says, after a recent shout out on the Legal Technologist page, we now have nearly 50 people involved from various law firms, in-house teams, and consultancies. So he said there's two main goals of the project. So it's called the Defining the Legal Ops Career Path project. The first is to create a market standard career path for legal ops, a structure which gives employees and employers alike an understanding of hierarchy, skills required, role titles, and pay banding. The second is to provide visibility to the legal ops career path as an alternative end-to-end career path in the law. An alternative that can be promoted at university level, reflecting a different legal career option with a solid structure and prospects. It's an open project, so if you're involved in legal ops, feel free to reach out to me and I'll provide access to the mural board. Workshops will likely begin next month. So I think this is such an important, I even saved this one, such an important conversation. And I really appreciate Mark for his ability to really push the envelope and be an innovator when it comes to recognizing what we need and what is missing within our growing legal tech career path space. So as people who have been lawyers in the past, or maybe aren't lawyers, but are interested in legal technology, I think it's so important for us to understand what options are available to us. And especially in my role as global ambassador to law schools for Gavel, it's really important for me to impart to the students that there is an option for people outside of the traditional practice of law, which is completely fine if people want to go the traditional route. I just feel that there's so much opportunity in this particular legal tech space to explore different options. But if there aren't any classes or aren't any different sort of certification courses, if there aren't any sort of different universities or set career paths or ways to demonstrate your proficiency in something that would make it to where you get hired over someone else in sort of the job market, then I think we have a real problem here. And I mentioned previously the company Giglaw, which I used to do some work for. Let me just pull their website up really quick. So I absolutely love this company. It's headed by the CEO and founder is Haley Leviashvili, who I worked very closely with while I was automating some work for different law firms, where I would create the applications and the workflows and the both internal and external workflows on Gavel that the lawyers and paralegals would use to facilitate their legal work in a more efficient way. So with that being said, when we talk about this sort of idea of quality assurance, I just want to kind of take us all the way back to my beginnings of being at the time was called a documator and now is called a Gavel expert, or somebody who is very proficient in the tool that is Gavel, or building with this sort of no-code tool. So it goes back to my time at Vala. So Vala is a legal tech company, legal tech startup out of Scotland that I mentioned while I was doing my intro. And they really focus on people who are pro se litigants, who are going to employment tribunal, and it's kind of a case management platform for that particular type of person, where they can create tasks and a timeline of events, and they can share their case with an advisor or a friend, a trusted person in their life, where they can kind of have a second pair of eyes on it. And so they're really, really amazing, and I highly recommend them. But what I was going to say is, it was during my time at Vala that I first kind of got tuned into the idea of what I would be doing next, which was working with Giglaw as sort of an automation specialist, you could say. So while I was working at Vala, I did a workshop where I hosted a workshop with in partnership with several different nonprofit organizations, where we really focused on how can we create a resource guide for these people that might make it to where it is really giving them just the information that they need. Because when they're in something like this, when you start to Google something, it can feel very overwhelming. So we wanted to create a type of tool using Gavel that would show or hide depending on somebody's very specific situation. So maybe were they in England, Wales, or Ireland? Were they in, was it for them or for a friend? Was it related to age discrimination, or was it related to, because it was specifically a workshop around discrimination matters. Obviously there's many other like unfair dismissal in other ways. but it would be like maternity discrimination, age discrimination, race discrimination, all of the different protected categories. And I created a worksheet, a resource guide for the attendees of this workshop that made it to where they could interact with this tool in this very easy sort of click and see way, that at the end, it would give them a personalized letter from the VALA team that said, thank you for interacting with us. We're so sorry for what you're going through. Here's a list of very directed resources offered by these various charities to help you in your particular situation. That might be helpful. Here's some different helplines and things like that. So while I was building that, I got really excited about legal tech, or just tech generally, because obviously I was working for a legal tech startup, but I wasn't in a builder role because we actually had developers who were building the tool, and I was trying to help people know about the tool. So my role was different. But when I was doing the workshop and building with Gavel, I felt that I was actually a little bit better suited to being one of the builders in the users of the actual Gavel tool. And so I just thought it was really fun and came really naturally to me. And I really liked the challenge of the logic and the challenge of figuring out how everything works together and combining these different things. So it made it to where I kind of whet my appetite for this type of work. So as I mentioned in a previous session of the Wednesday Build, I did some networking where, because my contract with VALA was only for a limited time. It was only for 6 months. So I was looking at what I was going to be doing afterwards. And what I ended up doing was I went to this Hire an Automator page, where it has a list of Gavel automation developers that you can hire to build out your workflows for you, so you don't have to do them. And I literally just went through this list and grabbed everyone's name that had a full name that I could look up on LinkedIn. And this is Haley and Giglaw that I mentioned, and this is Megan, who I'm going to mention later as well. And I literally just grabbed everyone's name, and then I sent them a message, and I just said, hey, I saw that you are at the time, Documenter. I am interested in seeing if this might be something that I would want to do. Would you mind having a call with me, or just letting me know what your experience has been like as I try to navigate whether this is something I wanted to do? So first thing, that was how I was able to meet other people who were doing the thing that I wanted to do. I had to kind of take the initiative to find them. Thankfully, they were all on this list, but also you could say in the Slack community as well. But I joined the Slack group. I was, kind of looking through all of these different people and connecting with them. But that's one of the pieces of this kind of idea around quality assurance as well, is a community and the importance of that community. And if we look back at Mark's post, for example, you can see that this is an initiative where there's already 50 people involved from law firms, in-house teams, and consultancies. So there's an idea of a coming together around how we might be able to address this idea of educating the people who are going into this type of alternative career path that cropped up out of the fact that there's new technologies that people then need to learn and implement. So somebody needs to be designated to implement that because other people are doing other aspects of that job. So that's just to say, so I was able to interact with these different people and ended up working with Haley and Megan in different capacities, but within this whole space. So Haley, as I mentioned, is the CEO and founder of Giglaw, where they source the projects for automators and then connect them together. So they'll find the clients, and then they'll find the automators, and they'll match those two people together. And then manage kind of the relationship between those two and kind of help out. So in my particular case, I was able to find these people through community, and then ended up working with these people just by reaching out to both of them. I actually sent them both the same message, just put their names in instead, and literally just said like, hey, I see that you're doing this thing. I'm interested in doing this thing as well. Would you mind letting me know about your experience? And then I later met Megan in person. I haven't met Haley in person, but we're going to see each other in December. And I just had a conversation with Megan about what she was up to and how she kind of got into her work. And yeah, we got to have breakfast together in Alaska, and it was amazing. So anyway, so that's kind of how I initially was thinking about this career path at all, was kind of it just came up from something I was doing at another tech startup. So I kind of felt like it was by chance, but it could have been by design if somebody had let me know that this was an alternative legal career path. If there was someone to say that you don't have to follow the same traditional trajectory as everyone else that came before you, because we live in a new world now where legal technology is really starting to dominate the conversation, because everyone at these different conferences across the globe are all talking about legal technology, generative AI. We're talking about things like how ChatGPT might affect our roles in the future as lawyers, with things like do not pay coming to the forefront and things like that. So what we see here is a completely new environment that law grads are coming into without as much knowledge or training yet of how they can get involved and participate in legal technology. I actually had a call with an undergrad the other day, just yesterday, who is trying to decide if it's worth going to law school anymore because of legal technology. So these are the questions that people have at age 20, 21 or lower. And not everyone obviously enters or graduates from undergrad around that time, but in most cases, if they're, if they went the traditional sort of like high school, then college route, this undergrad, because of all of this sort of posts and news about things like ChatGPT and all of these different types of technology kind of taking over this space, he was asking me, should I even invest the time, the money, and the energy in going to law school if at the other end of this, in a couple of years, everything will be driven by technology and I won't be ready? So that's why these conversations around career paths in legal ops or in legal automation or in legal productization, for example, are so important. And around that also brings the question of quality assurance, of how do we standardize the professions that are cropping up based on the new technologies that have also cropped up at the same time. So when we think about this question, I'll also kind of go a little bit over what happened to inspire me to create the certification courses with Megan. So initially, it was an idea that I had because of the fact that, one, I was really having fun creating the tool with the resource guide for VALA. And then I had a call with Dorna, who is the CEO, Dorna Moini, who's the CEO and founder of Gavel. And I basically just pitched her the idea of having some certification courses. And I'll tell you why the initial thought came first. So while I was going through the hire a document automation specialist page and sort of going through the Gavel automation developers, one of the people that I met was Paul Sutton, who is this corporate and commercial lawyer who has tons and tons of experience and uses Gavel for many of his things as well, and has things on the marketplace that are really useful for his specific demographic. So when we had actually a call on the day that I sent out the message, and we just had, it was about a 10-minute chat or so. And he was just saying, well, send me a resume and I'll take a look and, just see whether there might be something. So I thought it might be fun because my resume wasn't up to date at the time. While I was kind of updating it, I thought one of the things he mentioned on the call was it's really better to show rather than tell. So I asked him, what advice would you give me before I send you my resume? What do you really want to see? And he was saying, I would really appreciate if you could, kind of show me what you've overcome or sort of like what challenges you face and things like that. So as I was preparing that, I think he was really thinking more about like, what's your thought process when you encounter problems and how do you problem solve around sort of things that you encounter. And actually just him kind of putting that in my head made it to where I was like, well, I think that I could show rather than tell my experience by actually building my interactive resume using the tool that I'm trying to tell him that I know how to use. So I can show that I have knowledge of how to actually create this and maybe add things that are a little bit more special and interesting than a normal, just plain default workflow. So the one that I ended up building for him in a weekend, or it was like a 2-day thing, was this one, which is this sort of welcome to Brittany's interactive CV, since he is here in London as well. And it was like, if you just want straight to the point, if you just want the CV, click here, and then he gets that. But if you want a more interactive, customized, and fun experience, try clicking around, exploring, and inputting text here. So select a category, for example, so he could select this one, or this one, or this one, or certifications, and so on. So I kind of made it to where I was showing him and demonstrating that I was able to build this tool. And then the person would put in their first name. So in my case, let's just say Brittany as an example. And then my company's name. So I'm going to say Chromium Kamai LLC, which stands for Where Knowledge Meets Application and Implementation. And then you would say continue, how I made this workflow. So then this was kind of the piece that he was saying, I would love to see how you were overcoming challenges or, things like that. So what I did was I recorded a Loom video where I walked through my workflow and I just said, this is how I made this. This is, these are the parts that I felt like were a bit of a sticking point for me. And this is how I overcame that particular challenge. So he could kind of watch this video, see that I knew how to add videos to a workflow. Then that person could continue. They could review their answers. They could continue again as well to produce something at the end. They could book a time using the Calendly page here, or they could email me here. An email is sent to me when somebody sends this, and then I could have them see a personalized sort of resume and cover letter like this, where they have my name and information, and then they have today's date, and then they have my name and what I am. And then I have like, hi, Brittany. So the person's name. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm looking forward to consider your consideration of my qualifications and how it would fit with the team at Chromium Kamai LLC. So their particular company's name was inputted here and here, and so on. So I have the resume down here. So you also could have just a plain version just of the CV as well as an output document. So that was what I created. Now this is relevant because of the fact that it was very challenging starting this from scratch to figure out how to get these colors to be different and the font to be different, because what I wanted was for him to go to this workflow and immediately tell that I could do something that not a lot of people could do, which was that I was able to add custom CSS to the workflow build that was outside of just copy and pasting the link from the Learning Center. So what I mean by that is I wanted it to be that it was very striking, that it was different from other workflows that he's seen built. So I had originally gone to the Gavel Learning Center and looked up something like custom CSS, just to learn how to do that. So I knew that you could add your own styles, but I wanted to kind of learn more about how. And this will be relevant to the kind of quality assurance conversation a little bit later. But for now, I'll just kind of go into the fact that I was reading this from start to finish, and I saw you can use any of the design themes listed here. So if you click on this button here, it takes you to something called Boot Swatch, which is free themes for Bootstrap. So it means that you can kind of choose any of these and have them added to your particular workflow's CSS and change the default. So what happened though is, so if you see here, these are all in a link format. And when I went to this particular link and saw all of these, I thought this one might be good. And so I was like, okay, well, where is the URL? Because I was new and didn't understand anything about all of this stuff. So I was just like, okay, well, it's going to give me a link, right? Because it said you can use any of these things. So I was like, okay, well, where is the link? So I checked all these buttons. I said download, maybe that does something. And then I was like, well, this seems a bit weird. I don't really think this is the right flow that's going on here, but whatever. And then I probably tried to open this and just really didn't know what to do. So, sorry, one second. It's going to open Kindle for a second, but either way, so I was trying to figure out what is it I'm supposed to do with all of this stuff, like this, what am I supposed to do with this file? What am I supposed to do with all of this stuff? So anyway, what I ended up doing was doing a lot of Googling and a lot of trying to figure out how the heck are you able to turn a file like this that downloaded for me into a link. I just could not figure that out. And so this is where some educational pieces would be helpful, because I just felt like obviously this is very helpful to point me in the right direction, but it didn't actually tell me step by step how to put this from whatever is on this page that they sent me to the link that I could actually put in my CSS. In my workflow as a link. So when I was going through this process, this was absolutely the hardest part of the whole build. Everything else was a lot easier, but this idea of turning a file into a link that you could then put onto your account and make change the default CSS was really challenging. So that is the genesis of the idea for the certification courses, because it took me so many hours to find the answer to this question and figure it out. And I had to sort of reverse engineer it, because as I said, I wasn't taught how to do this. So I just had to self kind of teach by reverse engineering. What I ended up doing was I looked at the links and I just said, what is the same about each of these links that makes it able to be read by the system? And when I looked at it, I noticed that all of them say Amazon AWS, but they also say Documate. So I was like, what do Documate and Amazon AWS have to do with each other? I have no idea. So what I ended up doing was I started to see sort of like S3 and sort of Amazon So this was the common theme amongst all of these different things, right? Is Documate styles, and then S3, and then US West 1, and then Amazon AWS.com. So I kind of looked up sort of maybe something like CSS, AWS, URL, something like that. And eventually I figured out that I needed to create an Amazon AWS account. I needed to use S3 in order to create a link that also had a bucket policy that made it to where the bucket was public, and all of this stuff that kind of came along with this process that was so not apparent just by being linked out to Bootswatch. So that is no disrespect to the Gavel Learning Center, which is very robust and super helpful. It's just to say that I felt, as someone who was trying to figure it out and trying to do something a little bit more advanced and different, that there was a gap and there was an opportunity for something like a course that then could be monetized. Because if I was sitting here spending 13 hours trying to figure out where the help article was on AWS to give me the bucket policy to make my policy or the access public, then somebody else who is also in the same position as me, who has never encountered this information or this particular circumstance before, who's doing the same type of research and probably getting about the same results in the same amount of time, would also benefit from having some type of person just saying, this is how you do it, and this is the bucket policy. Now that I figured it out, go ahead and work on something else that you can teach me later and I can learn from you. So that's this whole idea of knowledge sharing and best practice sharing, and the ability to share knowledge amongst professionals so that we can free each other's time up to focus on something that will progress everyone forward, rather than all of us having to reinvent the wheel, learning how to do this one thing just to change the colors of the buttons. So I think that that was really the point where I felt like it would have been nice if you had something like a course besides, obviously, like I said, because even though this learning center is very robust and helpful, there is a little bit of opportunity here for somebody to fill in the gaps for someone who wants to do something a little bit more advanced. So that's kind of the genesis of that idea. And then I pitched the idea to Dorna, and then she said, yes, go for it. And then I later had breakfast with Megan where we kind of chatted, and I mentioned I'm working on a course, and she said, I would love to help you with that. And I said, amazing. And then she ended up doing all of the videos for this and all of the content. And I just kind of guided along the way and sort of made sure that we were kind of accomplishing the goal of standardization, certification, and opportunities for people who are already quite advanced to test out. So we created a test, and we are able to use the official Gavel badges to show and demonstrate our certification in this particular tool. So let's use the next half of this conversation to talk a little bit deeper about this idea of quality assurance and the usefulness of something like a certification course and what people are doing in the space to kind of bridge the gap. There's an education gap and a certification gap and a course gap. There's just sort of a piece that's missing right now between the advancements in technology and the people who are trying to catch up to that and utilize the tools and are becoming very good at that, but not being necessarily recognized for their work, or not having any reference for how much to charge for their time, or whether they should do it based on by application or by hourly or by whatever else, and then how much. So there's a lot of questions around that have to do with this question of new professions in legal technology. Is what should the pay be? What are the standards to say that this person should be hired over someone else who is also self-taught, because everyone's self-taught until we make something that certifies someone or is in some way officially the thing that you do in order to do that job. So we're at the forefront of that right now, as people who are sort of becoming masters of a tool or experts in a tool. And it's our responsibility to share that knowledge with other people, so we're not all spending so much time building things and trying to like stumble and learn all the way, making all the same mistakes, when we could just eliminate the mistakes and move forward and build more interesting tools that we have more time for. Now, one of the things that's really important about this conversation as well has to do with this piece about QA, or quality assurance, which is not every builder is the same or builds the same way, which is hard when you have someone like me who comes into a gig law situation, for example, and they say, hey, can you work on this application that somebody else has also worked on? And you're coming in trying to go, what did they do? Not that everyone does a bad job, but you're coming in with your own way of doing something, and someone else came in with their own way of doing something, and maybe they were at a different level and then like learned things along the way, and then you're coming in to try to not necessarily fix it, but you're trying to build on top of it. And now maybe you have to redo all of the templates because of what's being asked of you or whatever ever else. So that can be a real nightmare. So what if we instead had it to where everyone was at the same base level and understood the ramifications and the consequences of certain types of ways of building something, so that we don't have breaks in design down the road, and everyone understands what happens when you change a variable from uppercase to lowercase, what happens when you kind of make any changes along the way, and what are the effects of that. And I think if we all have that base understanding as builders, then it would be a lot easier to collaborate on projects, to understand each other's builds, to learn tricks from each other. And that's also the importance of that community piece that we've talked about as well. So especially as I mentioned around build strategy, I think this is very important when it comes to internally facing workflows, because when you have internal workflows connected to maybe an external client intake form, for example, the way that those function can be and are very different from the way an externally facing application function. So for example, when I was building for one client, what they had was a client intake form that collects all of the sort of essential information, but also very standard and something that would be used across several workflows. So we would push the data from that client intake form into the other workflows, such as like a will or a trust or something like that. So the way that I built that particular workflow would function differently than something that an end user or a client would, the client of the lawyer, for example, would interface with. So I know building it that that the person using it will be a paralegal or the lawyer themselves, and that they would be opening this particular workflow from the data manager. So that meant that I would put all of the default variables for like name and all that kind of stuff, and map all those variables as default answers, for example, if there was a difference in the variables. So obviously, if you already had all of the variables the same, all that person would have to do, you wouldn't have to make it the default answer. You would just push the information in and it would populate those things. But in the case that I had, that's what I'm talking about standardization, is there were different variables used in one workflow versus the client intake form, which should have been the master variables for everything, but they weren't. So I had to get creative about how I fixed or updated or edited the workflow in order to make sure that the understanding of how it was going to be used would still make it to where the information was populated from one form or workflow to the other. So that's why it's so important, is if somebody could just say, hey, you really need to think about the design strategy of this particular sort of organizationally infrastructure of these workflows, how they fit together, that would have been really helpful in my life as an automator. So we can, as I said, share this information with each other so that we all can sort of focus our energy and attention on building really robust, powerful legal applications, workflows, and tools, internal and external. So what we're seeing with all of this, what we're seeing is that people are starting to create their own types of certification courses in these tools that they've become experts in. So with that being said, we see new academies cropping up. So like mine, for example, Cormam Academy, I focus on the tools that I really like and that I am really good at and that I like to use and I'm sort of more involved in, such as things like Gavel, as well as Softer and Airtable and Zapier and things like that. I've also created a certification course for Go Full Page. So my clients are actually people who are looking to create courses for their new tech. So that's been very interesting for me because they have the problem of not having something that they can offer their customers to teach them how to use the tool. So that's where I come in. I can come in and say, hey, this is how you use the tool. I'm pretty good at it. You need to like focus on these things. And this is functionally how you create this or do this or use this particular tool. So what I was going to show you is an example of an academy out of France. So let me see if I can find this. It's called, let me just see, No Code. There was a No Code Summit in Paris that was partially put on by a company that has Allegria here. Okay, so Allegria is a company in Paris, I believe, that has its own sort of course that helps people learn how to be no code. It's not a term that I really like, to be fair, but it's called no code maker. So let me just see if I can find Allegria. I believe it's this one. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Allegria group. So here, look at this, professional no code training, Allegria.academy. Allegria.academy is the first professional no code training program in France and Europe. Find out more about our program, our partner companies, and more. We train, we staff, we make no code. Allegria Group is creating the first no code ecosystem with excellent no code training courses, the largest community of no code professionals, and so on and so on and so on. So this is what I'm talking about, is we see private companies or private entities, or you could say maybe this is a sort of like social enterprise type of thing where they have, there's maybe some funding, some grants or something like that. So what we see with the Allegria Academy is that you can become a no code expert with them. They're 100% free training for the learner. They're talking about things like Bubble and Webflow and Make and Glide. No code school in Europe, no code experts trained, plus 130 no code experts trained per year. They're the first no code school in Europe, so amazing. And then you can see all of these different options. Now you can see some figures. So they say that 38,000 euros is the average exit salary for a no code maker. This is what I was saying about maker, which is not my favorite term, to be fair. And actually, I made a lot more than this when I was doing no code automation. So I don't think, it just depends, because in my experience, European companies so far, salary-wise, have not paid as much as American companies do. So I think that if you're going to go through this training, you could work at a place that pays you a salary, for example. Or you have a million skills now to create your own applications using no code tools that you could make far more money than this by doing that. Or you can become an educator yourself in a very niche market. For example, maybe you become a super professional at a particular tool and you are the absolute expert in that particular tool. And that is how you make your money. Or maybe you become an ambassador like I do for Gavel. There's more ways to make money than this. So I don't want this figure to deter you because I did not make that little, which, to be fair, like it's not to like discount that this salary might be good in other situations or maybe average, but just to say, for those of us who are from America, for example, where starting salaries are closer to like $140,000 now, that seems quite low. Anyway, but you can see the idea here is that we have this idea of why should you become a no code maker? What are the programs? If we look at their program, they have 3 months of training. So you can see the different educational objectives and sort of like what this is all about. Let me just see. 12 months of specialization for a work study program. So I actually had initially applied for this program and was kind of approached about it. However, it wasn't really the direction I really wanted to go as far as the amount of training. So it was a little bit too long for my stage of where I'm at right now. But the point is that this is what's happening, is we're seeing these companies like Allegria.academy, for example, that are creating curriculum around no code automation tools or no code tools generally, where you can build applications that are very robust and powerful, both internal or external, using no code tools such as Webflow or Softer or Gavel or anything else. So in my particular case, because of the Genesis story that I've told you around my experience with sort of creating an interactive resume, as well as creating a workshop resource guide in these different settings, my niche was going to be Gavel, because I really love the tool. I think it has so much potential and is quite powerful, and the team is very good, that I could have a more collaborative relationship with them to kind of give feedback and have them actually respond. to that feedback and actually make changes. But as I said, you're seeing more of a grassroots effort to let people know about these alternative career paths in the law, as well as in the sort of tech space generally, for no code operators, for legal ops, for all of these people who are around this idea of legal technology. It's really coming from the bottom rather than from institutions, in my particular experience, which is that although there are new classes that are being offered by law schools, for example, that include things like legal technology, you have excellent clinics out of many different institutions. So they are cropping up, but there is the problem of the faculty advisor or the clinic director having to get buy-in from administrators who may not have the same insight as they do, or people who are within the space on the ground. So what we're seeing, like I said, is a grassroots effort for people to share the fact that there are career opportunities in this space of legal technology, and that there's opportunity to be a leader and an innovator and a driver of that innovation through these different tools and career paths. So what I was going to say as well is that what I've seen with my particular case is we have had a lot of interest in the Gavel certification courses. So what I've done now is I'll just quickly kind of talk about what's available and what we're doing at Cormam Academy with Megan. So I chose to engage with Megan because Megan has been around for quite a while in this space. She was with Documate since the very early beginnings. I kind of was first introduced to Gavel in 2020 during a Passport to Practice and Legal Tech Essentials class, where Dorna Moini, the CEO and founder, as I mentioned, did a talk about her product, did a demo, and then gave us all free accounts. So I had my first free account back in 2020, participated in a hackathon competition that she ran back then, became a finalist and really loved the tool, but then kind of put it down and came back to it later when I was working at Vala. So as I mentioned, I came up with this idea for a certification course, or just a course generally, from my experience with building out a tool with Gavel, where I felt like there was a gap in knowledge between seeing something in the learning center and actually trying to implement the rest of it. So what are the rest of the steps between being directed to this site and actually implementing it? And as I mentioned, such a great learning center, but also that was a reality, which was I didn't know how to do that, and I needed someone to tell me, or it was going to take me 10 or 13 hours to figure it out myself, which that's what it did take. And I did figure it out. So I am self-taught, and it, I had a moment of pride when it worked, but I don't want everyone else out there to have to go through that same thing. So that's why we decided to do this. And when I was talking about how I engaged Megan, was that, well, I guess she just really offered to help, and then we sort of just did it. Was that she has been around from the beginning. So she is so knowledgeable about this tool. And I was newer to the space, but got really good fast, and just had the kind of business background to understand that there was a gap in the market here that could be filled by someone. And if nobody else was going to do it, I will do it. So that's when you get the different courses that we have on Gavel. So for example, we have the basics course, we have the silver course, the gold course, and the test out course. And then we also have a bundle where you can have the basics, the silver, and the gold all in one. The benefit here is that you get certified. So you can say, I am a certified silver Gavel expert, a certified gold Gavel expert. I am certified in Gavel at the basic level. And that is starting to create some quality assurance in standardizing of the profession of being an automator, or going into a law firm. If you want to still work at a traditional law firm, you can be that inside person who's the only one who's certified in that particular tool. And that's kind of what we're seeing now more and more, is the value of differentiating yourself as an automator in the market, to say, I am gold certified in this tool. Therefore, this is the tool, this is the test that I took in order to get that certification. I know these specific things. So the person who is hiring or the client who is engaging the services of this particular automator, for example, is they're able to see what they know how to do by looking at the curriculum for that particular certification course. And they can see that it was taught by people who have been in the industry for a while, or that are representatives of the company that is certifying, and that we have officially been authorized to issue these particular badges and certifications. So that is where we're starting to see, like I said, this grassroots effort. It's the person like me who was using the tool and saw an opportunity and a market opportunity to fill a gap in the knowledge, and at the same time standardize the profession of a Gavel expert and what that really means, and really adding some weight to what that means to be a Gavel expert. Because at the time, everyone could just sort of maybe demonstrate some mastery of it and be certified, and not to downplay at all the people who have been certified are sort of given the badges. But that is just to say that there wasn't really a standardized process or test to say that they're gold or silver or whatever else, except for the fact that Gavel works very closely with these automators and cares about sending their clients to people who know what they're doing. So like I said, everyone who has the badges before the certification courses absolutely deserves them. It's just to say that somebody who's coming in, who's new, who would like to be certified and have a more structured way of doing that, and get to bypass some of the pain and agony I went through to figure out how to do some things, then we have these offers now available for people. With that being said, too, I also recognize that a lot of people really care about having a lot of accountability and support as they go through this certification journey, because it can feel lonely to sit by yourself trying to learn something, even if it's still fun. With that being said, what we're doing now is I'm going to start doing core cohorts. So core cohort 1, for example, starts tomorrow around this time. And we're going to basically walk through each of the classes together week by week. So in the first week, we're going to complete the basics course. In the second week, we're going to complete the silver course. In the third week, we're going to complete the gold course. And then in the fourth week, we're going to do our workflows, or people who are doing the test out course can join us if they'd like to. So the test out idea is, like I said, for people who are already very much experts in the tool, but they would like to have the certification to demonstrate that they know what they're doing in the market to their own clients, or to obtain new clients, and to share that they are a gold certified Gavel expert. So that is kind of what I wanted to share with you for today, just to let you know that we are starting that tomorrow, March 30th, 2023 at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The way that you can join us is you just select your course, and you can join us wherever you start. So for example, as I mentioned, we're going to be starting in core 1. So we're going to start with basics for week 1. Then you can join us if you'd like during silver week for core 1 cohort, if you are only doing that particular class. If you want to join us for gold, you can just join us in week 3. If you're just doing test out, you can just join us in week 4 and kind of do it along with us and share what you've created. So as I mentioned, if we look at the actual curriculum or think about it, Megan is the one who did all of the videos, and her team did an amazing job grabbing the different screenshots and kind of explaining how everything works. And my role is going to be facilitating these core cohorts live, as well as kind of how this applies when you're creating applications, and what you can do with your certifications in the sort of new market that we have seen here for automators as a job. So with all of that being said, thank you so much for your time and attention, for those of you that are here with me live, as well as those who are watching the recording. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at any time. I'm just going to go over a few announcements, and then I'll give you my contact information towards the end. So this is the Wednesday Build, and I have new episodes live every Wednesday. I also issue a new issue of Code Word Hex every Tuesday, which is more practical. So that is a hands-on building exercise every week. And then we have courses in software and Airtable, as well as the Go Full Page certification course, with more to come, as I mentioned. Gavel certification courses, which we went over in basic, silver, and gold test out. The fellowship for the Law Students in Legal Tech Access to Justice is a great program, but is now closed. So no more applications, but we do have 80 fellows, which I'm very proud of and excited about, to kind of get them to the finish line. Then we're going to have our hackathon competition. If you join any of these, the Wednesday Build, Code Word Hacks, or any of our courses, you're automatically added into Chromium Global, which is our Chromium community where you can interact with other legal professionals or just tech professionals or people who are interested in technology and learning more, and kind of find your community there as well. There's also a very active Slack group for the Gavel community, so I highly recommend that you join that as well. So thank you again for your time and attention. The next one will be next Wednesday, 5th of April at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So we're going to be discussing the topic Sarah Blakely's fake commute and why she says you need one. And I'll go into that at that time, which is a really, really good one. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Brittany Hernandez. You can also connect with me via email at brittany@chromium.pro. For any inquiries regarding my role with Gavel as the Global Ambassador to Law Schools or any speaking engagements, you can reach me at brittany@gavel.io. Thank you again so much for your time, and I can't wait to see you all next week. So bye, everyone.